is Brooklyn, otherwise known as the Traumatic Otaku, and today we will be making a ruched top out of this velvet lycra that I inherited from my aunt. She's not dead, she's just a retired dance teacher. So we'll be making a singlet or a spaghetti strap top with a ruched bust and elasticated back. It is based on this singlet top that I absolutely adore, except obviously the top half of the singlet will be completely different. We'll also be making an elf top with the same pattern, but with long sleeves instead and with a jersey fabric instead of velvet lycra. If you want to recreate this top, here is the pattern reference sheet that has all of the measurements that I am using. Obviously, you alter this to your own measurements and don't actually print out the drawings that I did. This is just a reference for shape and size, and we are working with predominantly rectangular shapes. I ended up using the said cropped singlet top for a size reference, so I'd suggest using something like that for a size reference when drawing up a pattern. Also of note, this top is a crop top. For materials, you will need a sewing machine. I would suggest an overlocker too. However, my one is currently out of commission, so I did this without an overlocker. You'll also obviously need pins, fabric scissors, a ruler and measuring tape, a stretch fabric of choice. Again, I'm using both a dark blue velvet lycra as well as a green jersey fabric. Elastic, roughly 30 centimeters, especially if you want to do the elf top that I will be making later in this video. And you will also need a thread in the similar color to your fabric. I highly suggest this because I did the blue lycra one in 2 different colors of thread and it didn't turn out all that well. But that being said, let's move on to the steps. First things first, I'm going through the scraps of fabric that I have, as these are secondhand fabrics, measuring out and cutting the pieces that I need, doing smaller pieces first on the smaller scraps. Next, cut out the straps using the same fabric. I measured 38 centimeters by 4 centimeters, which were too large for me. I would highly recommend either getting one of those clips that you typically see on singlet tops and threading it through. Also, making it much thinner, make it maybe 2 centimeters instead of 4 centimeters. But moving on. The next step is then obviously cutting out all the rectangular pieces I need, making sure there's enough for each. And this is where we get into the sewing part. So first things first is we're going to actually be ruching the front part of the top, otherwise known as gathering. There is a specific name for the type of stitch that I'm using to gather the fabric. However, I don't remember it. Though I do remember the steps. So what you want to do is from the top of the fabric, measure out however long. A lot of people say 1/8 of an inch. I don't know what that measurement is. I just eyeball it personally. But you want to sew 2 rows of a straight stitch on the longest stitch length on your sewing machine. Then what you must not do on either ends of the fabric is must not backstitch. So that thing that everyone teaches you to do, where you press on a pedal or press on a button, that helps lock in the stitch, don't do that because you will be sewing over this ruched section to lock it in later. You do not need to do this part. That being said, I didn't. We're going to talk about the problems with the first one I did, but once you have done sewing the gathering stitch, I guess, what you want to do is go to the ends of the fabric, making sure you grab 2 of the ends of the fabric of the thread and start pulling. This will create a gathering effect in the fabric. Just be careful not to pull too hard as to not snap the thread, because that can happen and you will lose all of your gathering work. Now, I skipped this step, but then did it in the next top. What you want to do Actually, no, you don't. No, I'm not gonna tell you. You're gonna have to wait and watch the rest of the video. Technically, because I do all my sewing out of order, the next thing I sewed together was the straps. Again, I sewed them way too wide, but all I really did was a zigzag stitch all the way across, or down, sorry, the fabric with the good sides faced together. Then using a chopstick, I pulled them right side out, and then just sort of left them. The next thing I did was with the side pocket portion of the fabric, the piece that's going under your arms and that's connecting the higher edge of your bust with the back and the elasticated back of your top. With that, I purposely hemmed the top first as to not get all fidgety, because this section is very, very fidgety when connected to the actual top. Then I pinned said sections to the top ruched part, then sewing them together. From there, I sewed the connected ruched plus lowering armhole section to the front portion of the top, and just the front portion of the top, making sure to pin down where I wanted my ruched bits to go before sewing all of that together, and then cutting off the excess of this part of the top. I then proceeded to pin and sew the front part to the back part, because I, in this specific top, failed to put elastic in the back like I said I fucking would. But I didn't do that because I didn't think I would need it. I was wrong. The shirt is ever so slightly baggy on me. So I just sewed the front and the back together, putting a hem around the bottom of the shirt, cutting off any excess, and then sewing on the overly large spaghetti straps. And this is the end result. It is very cute on camera. There is a lot wrong with the top though. For example, the ruched bust needs the inner layer, mainly because it just doesn't sit right when you're wearing a bra. It doesn't, like, especially with how long these spaghetti straps are, you also need the elasticated back, which I very quickly found out, because it will make the shirt extra baggy, especially without that lining. Because if your tits do not fill out the shirt, then there will be a lot of extra space. So I fixed this in my next shirt, which this is the design here. It is a part of a larger project, but I wanted to share the better version of my ruched top to you guys, so I'm sharing this whole process with you. So I did the first few steps the exact same way, except I had new fabric, so I just cut out what I needed. I cut out, first of all, aligning a bust section to be ruched, the front portion and the back portion, making sure that there was extra fabric so that I could make long sleeves that would flare out to look elven, I guess. So the first thing that I did was very much like the last top. I ruched the front of the top, doing that gathering stitch, and then stitching, very important, pinning and sewing the ruched section to the lining. This is something that you need to fucking do. Then what I did was flipped over the ruched and lining and ironed it down flat so there wasn't any raw edge for the ruched section. What I would suggest here would probably be also to maybe cut off the excess of the raw edge so there isn't any big bump on the front of your shirt. The next thing I did was sew the two sides of the lining and ruched bust together to make sure that they stay together and that the ruched section does not move and flare out when sewing the next section, which would be immediately sewing the lining and ruched section to the lower section of the shirt to make sure that there wasn't a huge bar right under my tits was I immediately pinned and sewed both the lining and the ruched section to the bottom of the shirt. This was, as I said, to make sure there isn't a huge bar under my tits. That's personally a comfort thing. You can do that, and by bar I mean there wasn't so much fabric from constantly re-sewing that line together that there was just an evident bar of fabric that I could personally feel. After that, the next thing that I did was cut off any excess and obviously looked at the shirt. The next thing I did was make sure to sew an elastic band to the back of the fucking shirt. Learning from my mistakes, I made sure to put elastic there and to zigzag stitch over the elastic, then turning over the elastic and straight stitching across to give a nice hemline. Now in recording I have skipped a step, that being the extra little section that goes lower down into the rest of the shirt. I did have that in this shirt, however it wasn't as big nor as evident in this shirt as it was the last shirt, as I had enough fabric that I could compensate, as well as the fact that I didn't necessarily need it as I was sewing sleeves to the rest of the shirt. And speaking of sleeves, here I am drafting a rough pattern for the sleeves with how wide I wanted it to be, and then cutting out the fabric for said sleeve. It is oddly shaped a little bit, and I didn't have enough paper to make the full pattern, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to make in this footage. Next thing I did was sew along the bottom seam, the seam that would not be hidden and that would be closest to me, and obviously zigzag stitching over the raw edge as well. Also making sure along the section where my wrist would come out, making sure to hem that section by doing a rolled over hem, I believe that's what it's called. I'm not really good on technical terms, I just know how to do them. Then what I did was put elastic within the inside of the shirt, or sorry, inside of the sleeve. I didn't have enough elastic, as you can see in the footage, but I did that on both sleeves, then sewing the sleeves in the closest section to the shirt, obviously to the shirt. I did it inside out by accident. Please learn from my mistakes and make sure you know which side of the fabric you are sewing to your shirt, because I accidentally sewed my sleeves inside out and connected it to the shirt, which I did fix in the end result. And I really love the shirt. It is so cute. I look like I'm going to a Renaissance fair. I look like I'm an elf. I'm a fairy girl. I love this shirt so much, and it was originally meant to be part of a dress, but luckily for me, I have enough fabric that I can make essentially 2 shirts. So I'm going to be making it a second one that goes along with the dress, while this one just remains my cute little fairy top. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you got something out of this video other than just me rambling. I hope this is cohesive. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you're liking these little DIY sewing videos. I'm enjoying making them. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As I said before, I upload every Wednesday, occasionally on Fridays at 10 AM Australian Eastern Standard Time. And I hope to see you there. Bye.